Hello, hello, Denise. I'm so excited to have you on as one of my guests. We recorded your podcast I guess it was just last week. All the days are blending
I
together,
know,
but
right?
it was
Yeah.
so lovely to chat with you and start to get to know you. So I would love for you to introduce yourself so everyone can get to know you as well.
Sure, you bet. Thanks for having me, Megan. I appreciate so much what you're doing in the industry, and I'm honored to be on here with you. So, yes, my name is Denise Alvarez. For those who I'm meeting for the first time, I am the owner of Stormlily Marketing and then a host of the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. In brief, I say that I help dream chasing horse business owners to do more of what they love to do. And I do that by way of helping them to get clear on their messaging and create a cohesive plan for their social media, websites, and email marketing. The avenues or facets that I do that through right now are coaching, one on one coaching, as well as website copy and design. And then I have some online education resources as well. So it's kind of instant access DIY type thing. So yeah, that's in a very quick nutshell what I get to do. And I
That
love
was
it.
summarized beautifully.
Thank you.
And what helped you to get into that line of work? Especially, I love hearing when people target that niche of equestrians.
Yeah, you bet. So I've been doing marketing since I graduated college, which crazily enough was 20 years ago. Like when I say that, it sounds so weird. It feels like it was yesterday. But so marketing has always been a throughput for what I've done. Nonprofit marketing, trade association, ministry. And so now horse business owners now at the same time. So you have marketing has always been here. Horses have always been here. They just weren't always intertwined. So I grew up on the back of horses, trail rides, 4-H, that type of thing. My parents still have quarter horses. That's what we grew up on. I'm so grateful that they put that in me from a very early age. And then I've had a love of that and had access to that at all times. So when I decided to start my own business, I was actually pregnant with my youngest. She's 5 now. So that's how I track the age of my business because she is 5. I've been doing this for 6 years because I was pregnant with her at the time. And it was really an avenue for me to just create more freedom in my schedule and our finances, to be honest. And as I was doing that, I knew marketing was the skill set I had. And so I thought at first, I will just do marketing for small businesses. But this is very much a part of my story and why I help people with this because there are millions of small businesses and I'm one marketer. And I realized quickly that I wasn't going to be able to, nor did I want to, compete with agencies that are really able to help a broad scope of small businesses. And mostly, even those are local businesses. So I was like, I know I need to niche down. I just don't know what that's supposed to look like. And so, really, through a lot of prayer and evaluating my passions and skills and how to get those to intersect, that's how I landed on equestrians because honestly, I would rather be a horse trainer. Like I would rather have been the person that like my skill set was like, I'm gonna go out and learn to train horses. Like I wanted to be with horses. That's not my skill set, not my season of life. I married an LA boy who's a total city boy, so we still live in town. So it's just was not my season. Who knows what the Lord has for the future? So I'm not gonna knock it out, but it wasn't my season. So I was like, how can I still be a part of the equine industry that I love? The horse people that I love, and still use the skills that I have. And so that was the way they intersected. And I couldn't love it more because I really do get super fired up and passionate about helping equestrian entrepreneurs, about helping them clarify their messaging, figure out who they're going to speak to directly, because that's when their marketing is more effective. And I can do that better because I've walked that same path. And I can also speak into them as a horse business owner rather than just a random business owner because I've been in the horse world. And it's been really fun because I grew up in the Western side of things. So I
Mm-hmm.
never sat in an English saddle until 3.5 years ago. I took riding lessons for like my first official riding lessons ever. I wanted to learn to jump. And I've always wanted to learn to jump. And so it's fun because that gave me an insight onto the English side. So I get to build those relationships here in our community. I get to learn. So I'm watching YouTube videos all the time of people that I never had even heard of until 3.5 years ago because I grew up on the Western side. So it's really fun. I don't say that I specialize in Western businesses or in English businesses, but really it's the growth-minded entrepreneur. Whether you're on the Western and English side, I can help. I can kind of speak both languages. I'm not like extremely fluent enough to be your instructor, but I can speak the language enough to know your audience and help you really to get clarity on who that person is.
I completely understand that, but like the reverse, like I grew up with very much like the English world, and now a good friend of mine is a little bit more familiar with the Western world. And I just got a quarter horse. I had a Rocky Mountain before, but I just got a little quarter horse who's used to the Western world, and I'm like, I think I really want a little Western saddle for her, and I want to figure out like what we can do with that. So
Yeah, that is
I
so fun.
it's so fun to, and it is like I feel like they tend to be a little, maybe clicky is a bit of a strong word, but like if you're English, like you're typically usually very English. If you're Western, you're
Yes.
typically very Western. But I
Hmm.
love learning how the two disciplines intersect, and like learning about neck reining for me. I'm like, oh, this is really similar to like a lot of the classical dressage stuff that I grew up learning. Like it's the same concepts, just different way to approach it, and you can
Yeah.
play with both and get best of both worlds, and it's so
Yeah.
fun
It
to
is.
go in
It is so
between.
fun.
That's I love that you say you are married to a city boy too. So am I. I grew up more
Oh,
on
that's
like
so
a beef
funny.
farm, and it's so funny, like the things that are typical and normal for me. Like we now live in the city too, and it's a bit of not an adjustment because my parents grew up in the city. It was grandparents that I grew up on their farm, but the
Yeah.
things that make sense to me and that we got to experience growing up, he has absolutely no idea what
Yep.
I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Two completely different worlds for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun when they come together.
Yeah.
In terms of business, how do you work to define success with your clients that you're working with?
Okay, one of the things that I say often is that success is subjective. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so important for us to realize that, especially because in this world, I don't know if you see it so much on your side and in your feed, but because I follow people that speak in the entrepreneurial space, you hear so much of the six-figure business. Like that's put out there as if that is like the measuring stick for success. And it's not, it's not. And so I always remind people like, let's define success on your terms
Mm-hmm.
because we also have a variety of business owners. Some people, it is their side hustle. Some people, it is their main gig. Some people have these big aspirations financially, and that's awesome. Let's write those down and track those. But let's really define what success is to you and then get really nitty gritty. So, for example, I'm working right now in one on one coaching with someone who has a lesson barn. And so she has a mix of she does training. She has group lessons. And so we created like, how are we going to measure that? Well, let's first look at the numbers. What are you actually bringing in? How many lessons do you have per week? How many lessons do you have capacity to do? What are the areas we can scale? Those are definitions of success for her, but I've also worked with an equine photographer. It's going to look very different. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's very subjective and personal, but also very important to define. So I'm sorry, it's a depends answer, but that's why
Absolutely.
it depends. Like I think that's the nobody's favorite answer is it depends, but it depends on your capacity, depends on your season of life as well. My success measure right now is different because I have a kindergartner and a fifth grader. When I have older kids or when I'm an empty nester, that will look very different. When my daughter was 2 and at home a lot more, that also looked very different. So, season of life absolutely has to do with that as well.
And a season of life, that's exactly perfect. And I think some people go into business with an idea in their head of what they think they want it to look like. And like I myself, when I started, like I had a storefront studio and was getting like 30 people into a group class, and that was awesome. Like that was what I had pictured when I was in it. I realized I'm like, this actually isn't what I wanted. And I'm not getting that same like gratitude towards the life that I had built that I wanted. So I switched my whole business model. I now focus a little bit more on one-on-one coaching and smaller business,
Mhm.
or smaller group classes, so that we can connect a little bit more one-on-one with people, and I can track and cater towards their progress. But it's so interesting, like when sometimes when you start, it's such a different picture in your head than
Yes.
what you end up actually wanting to do.
Yeah, that is so true too. Yeah. And that's where action brings clarity, right? Like if you would have just sat and said, I'm not going to do anything until I can do this the way I picture it, then you wouldn't have had that clarity. But the
Yeah.
more that we actually take action, then we have the clarity for what that looks like for us.
And being okay to like step back and reflect and actually look at things. Like I think some people get so focused on what they had envisioned that they just kind of put their head down and bulldoze through.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful it was people in my life who were kind of like, you don't seem like you're enjoying like what you're
Uh-huh.
doing, and like you seem exhausted, and I was. And
Yeah.
it forced me to pause and be like, oh, actually, this isn't what I thought this would be like, and
Hmm.
pivot. And here I am, and I'm so grateful for where I am now. And it, but yeah, it takes a moment of pause.
It does. And remembering, like, I think the important thing that we forget is like you're the business owner,
Yes.
right? That's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is like you are the business owner. So you can pivot if you want. You're not stuck. Some people feel like they're stuck with what they're doing, but you're the business owner. It doesn't mean you can make like you didn't just close down the doors immediately. I'm sure it was a process. So it
Yes.
doesn't mean you just immediately make changes, but you do have the privilege and opportunity to make changes because you're the business owner.
Yeah, and they're terrifying, but
Yeah.
you but you
Yep.
do, that's why we got into this in the first place, is so that you can make those decisions
Mhm.
and figure out what works for you, as terrifying
Exactly.
as it may be.
Yeah.
So if you have someone who is looking to up their marketing game and just make a little bit more of a wider stance, what are some of the things that you might suggest for them?
Such a good question. This is a super practical. So, like, one thing I didn't say on the podcast, my goal is always like practical and actionable.
Mhm.
So, like, in a broader scope, I could say things like, you need to get really clear on who you serve. That is true, but that doesn't really help the person that's saying, okay, but how do I do that? So, how you do that is find that one customer or client that you want to duplicate. That's the very practical thing that I always tell people. Like, find who it is that you're wanting to duplicate. Who do you love to work with? And first sit down and write down what it is that you love about them. Like on a very practical level, is it the energy that they bring to the table? Is it you don't hear them say anything negative about other people in the barn? Or is it that they always show up ready to work? Like, what is it that you love about working with them? And then take it a step further and take them to coffee or lunch or dinner, whatever. But get one on one with them. Or if it's a family, talk to the family. For some of you, for some people, like they're coaching students. And so your ideal customer may be a combo of that student and parent.
Mhm.
So talk to them both and ask them questions to really understand, like, what made them choose you? What other options were they exploring before they came to you? What are the reasons they stuck around? What are the reasons they've referred so many people to you? What problems have they been having and how have you helped them? Like really understanding where they're at, how you've helped them, where they want to go. Because then what you're going to do is in your marketing, you're going to create content that speaks to them. Like you're trying to attract more of that customer that you love to work with. So, first, you need to really get to know them. And then you can create marketing materials and messaging that draws that person in.
That is some of the best advice. That's so simple, but when you said that, like pick a client you love, immediately like a client popped into my brain of like, oh my God, if I could like have a whole day of her, I would be
Yeah,
so pumped. And I'm very grateful. I love all of my clients, but like that breaks it down so simply. And I've been doing this for a very long time, and I
I'm so glad.
I love
Good.
that. So with doing this for a long time, one of the things that come up a lot of the time when I'm talking to people who are either just starting up a business or who have been doing it for a long time is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And when I was preparing to chat with you for this podcast, I saw several of your posts talking about imposter syndrome, and I think it's so important to address that and talk about that and bring light to it because we all have experienced it at some point or another.
Right. Absolutely. It has many facets, right? And to be honest, I haven't found anybody that has said it just went away completely. You just learn tools to deal with it as it comes. Because especially for growth-oriented entrepreneurs, like you're going to continue to do things that are going to challenge you and put you outside of your comfort zone. And what happens when we get outside of our comfort zone? We have fears and doubts that immediately creep in. And absolutely, imposter syndrome is one of those. And so when I'm coaching people and we find that that's what's keeping them stuck or they're realizing like I haven't been showing up on social media. I've been saying, like, often we have the surface level answers, right? Like, they'll tell me at first, like, I just don't know what to say. And then when we come up with clear ideas, then they're like, I just don't know if I can put my training philosophy online. I just don't know if I can put my face in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Like the real reasons they aren't showing up online are actually not that they don't know what to say. It's that they're afraid of showing up and feeling like an imposter, feeling like I don't really know as much as so and so down the road, or I only have 500 followers. I'm not that person with 50,000 followers. So what makes me think I can get on there? And so, two things I would say. Number one is it's always important to have a very clear why,
Mm-hmm.
because that's your filter for everything. So just imagine when you're having to do something hard, when you're coaching your clients that are having to do something that's difficult, they're doing it because they know what's on the other side. They're doing it because they want to ride better, because they want to get that ribbon, because they want to be a better rider for their horse. So they're willing to do the things that are uncomfortable because they know the clear why. And so it's the same thing for business owners. When you have a clear why behind what you are doing, you have a clear motivator, then you can tell yourself, okay, yes, this is a little bit scary, but I know that on the other side of this, I'm going to connect with the people that I'm here to help. And when I show up consistently, when I put my face in front of the camera, when I create that content, when I go live, all of these things that are scary, when I send my first email newsletter, for example, I'm going to do these things that are scary. And I might feel like an imposter, but I know that if I take action, I'm going to connect with the right people. And I'm going to get to do help more of the horses I want to help, more of the people I want to help. And therefore, I can do this even if I have that feeling. It doesn't mean you ignore it. It just means that you take the action anyways, right? Isn't that John Wayne says the
Yeah.
definition of courage, right? Being afraid and saddling up anyways. It's the same thing. And then the other thing I would say is to think about the people you want to serve. Again, kind of in that same line, but when you can do it and say, I'm doing this for the benefit of others, it's not for my benefit, then again, that gives you a little bit more power to do those things that can be scary and that so it's, yes, there's mindset. Yes, there's self-talk, and there are definitely books about that. And I encourage like that idea of capturing the negative thought. There are so many different ways that people say it, but capturing the negative thought, recognizing it, and then turning it around.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely do that. But on a super practical level, at some point you're going to have to take the action. So yeah, that's kind of how I encourage people to work through that.
It's such a combination of like one of the things that I talk about is I find some people when they are experiencing imposter syndrome, they're trying to do too much and
Mm,
they're trying to reach out and try too many different branches of things where I'm like, just hone in on what you feel to be true and what you feel like you can really rock and really be good at, and start to just start with that, just spread that first, and then branch out and do all the other wonderful ideas that they have. But I find it's easy if you can cling on to that one thing where it's like, I know I'm really good at this. and,
yeah, that's so
and
true.
yeah, because like it is scary putting yourself out with, like, I've been really lucky, knock on wood. I've only had one experience with internet trolls. Um, but it is scary. Even like I posted a video of myself riding like my new horse, and we're figuring each other out.
Yeah.
She hasn't been ridden consistently in a while, and it's scary where I'm like, oh, like that's not my best look, but this is where we're at right now. So here we go.
Yeah, kudos to you. I'm like, I don't even post a picture right now because I'm like, yeah. So definitely, I'm not here telling you that I don't struggle with those things. But what I will say is for me in my business, I don't have like, I'm not a trainer. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if I'm
And that,
coaching a
yes.
trainer, like you need to put yourself out there. I'm not a trainer. So it's a little bit different in that way. But yeah, when I see people post their videos, I'm like, good for you. I'm so proud of you because that does take a lot of courage.
Mm-hmm. And like, not to say that I didn't have a few like, oh, okay, I can work on this, and this from that
Right?
video, but
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love chatting about work-life balance. You and I did an awesome podcast about, like, that was our whole theme, our whole topic. But I want to just touch on briefly, as an equestrian entrepreneur, what are some things that you do to prevent burnout? How do you find that balance?
Balance. It's
I
so
know.
funny. Even when I read that question, I was like, oh man, can I speak into that and be authentic? Yes, because I'll be super honest. Like it is not always pretty and easy. There are principles that I keep learning to put in place. And so I'll just share some principles that
Mhm.
I'm trying to do to get in that order. Now, again, like you and I talked about my podcast, there are times and seasons of hustle where when I have a website project, like I'm not somebody that says, okay, I'm going to set a 2 hour timer and that's going to be good enough. Like, no, good enough is not good enough for me. I'll be honest. And so there are definitely like I was finishing a website a couple weeks ago and we went live at like 11:30 night.
Yep.
So she and I were on a call for like 2 hours from 9:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. That's not my norm, but there
Mhm.
are seasons where that has to happen. So number one, give yourself grace. But then number two, I'm a huge fan of a pen and paper planner. So I actually always have this on my desk. This one's called the Full Focus Planner.
Yes.
And it's got like he walks you through a goal setting process. You pick out your 3 tasks that are the most important. Like, so just principles that are not mine, but that I've built in is
Mhm.
that idea of writing everything down, having clear boundaries around your time. Again, I'm not perfect at it. It's like I struggle. I'm like, can I speak to this? Yes, but I can speak to it from the perspective of here's what I'm doing
Yeah.
as I am in process of learning that idea. But for me, I go back to the strong why.
Mhm.
So for either way, like when I set it down and I'm like, dang it, I have this idea in my head and I really want to do this whole series on social media, but my kids just got out of school. Um, then I'm done. Now, not always. There are definitely times where I'm like, okay, let me hear about your day. And then you guys can chill. I'm going to be in my office for another 30 minutes and I'll be back,
Yeah.
like, and that's fine. They don't, but the awareness of, okay, family is my priority. It's my strong why. And so I walk away when not everything's done the exact way I want it to be because I want them to know their priority. At the same time, I have a strong why related to the business. And so Stormlily Ranch is not something I shared about, but it's a nonprofit that I'm working to create. And that's a strong why connected to Stormlily Marketing. And so and my clients are a strong why for me. And so when I'm here at my desk, I'm all in, and so there's that. So therefore, I could easily be somebody that you would call a workaholic because I love what I do.
Yes.
But I have to have a strong why that pulls me the other direction. So for me, it comes back to having that strong filter and knowing both ways. That I have a strong why here, but I have to filter that through my strong why with my family too. And then personal care, that's a whole other that's a whole other thing that I was just talking to somebody else about. I don't have that perfected either. I'm learning like scheduling my workouts, scheduling my walk where I just walk to walk, not always playing a podcast because I'm totally like a learner at all times, but just having time and space to just be.
Mhm.
Um, I'm learning about that too. So I'm in process, Megan. I am not the one to come to talk to you about this, but I am in process.
But I think just like for all of us equestrian entrepreneurs, because we can hustle, I think it's important that it's just out there and we are trying, because there was definitely a point in my life where I wasn't trying to find any sort of balance or like, oh, am I overdoing it? Like there was no cognitive thought of that concept whatsoever. So I think for me, like I'm far from perfect at it as well. But in that process, I'm trying, and I think I'm doing myself a better service of at least having a mindful thought of, oh,
Yeah.
careful, like that's a bit too much. Let's pedal back. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, or even I like October is absolutely bonkers for me, and I'm like, okay, when in November can I take a weekend off where
Yes.
I just no
Hmm.
clients, no emails. I'm going to need time to recharge because I'm not going to make it to Christmas nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, you're right. It's that self-awareness,
Yeah.
right? I will tell you, this is similarly related, but I just wrote this down yesterday. I don't know if you've listened to Rory Vaden ever.
No.
Huge fan. Um, so he said, your personal development is the foundation of your personal brand. And I
Ooh.
thought, right? I was like, oh, that's so good. And I feel like that's even a part of it because honestly, as a brand and as a coach, if I'm running myself into the ground and then I'm trying to coach equestrian entrepreneurs and give them strategies for their social media so that they don't feel married to it and then they're burnt out, I can't do that well if I'm not trying to help myself to do better. Doesn't mean I'm going to them and saying, look, I stop at 2:20 p.m. every day because my kids got out at school. Yeah, ideally, but I'm not there yet,
Mhm.
but I can say, that it's okay if you didn't post that social media, but you showed up 110% for your family or for your spouse or your partner or whatever it is. That's still success. That's a win, right? And so I've got to be working on myself to do that in order to better coach them as well.
I I'm laughing at that because I literally just had that conversation with myself of like I often preach like yes, movement's really important. Sometimes rest is more important. Once in a while, rest is more
Mhm.
important. And I applaud clients when they're like, I'm so sorry, I cannot, I don't have that in me to come today, whatever. So I'm like,
Yeah.
that's why you can take a weekend off because
Yes,
client was doing
exactly.
that, I would be applauding them and saying, good for you. That's so great that you're
Yep.
recognizing that and putting yourself first. So I'm like, okay, you can do that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Any other final comments, words of wisdom that you would like to toss out there? It's always such a big, scary concept, but so far everyone I've said it to has rocked it. So
Oh gosh, no
yeah,
pressure, right?
no, none.
To be honest, for me, I've alluded to this multiple times, but to me, it is getting back to having a strong filter,
Mhm.
a filter of your why behind what you're doing, which then steps into having goals, is so important, but also a filter of your audience when it comes to your marketing and when you're creating products and services. Like if you don't have something that is filtering, especially for entrepreneurs, because we are multifaceted, we love to think of ideas, we love to learn, and then maybe implementation gets left off a little bit down the way. But every big idea that you have, you need to have a filter that you can take it through. So, whether it's the mission and vision of your business, and you're very clear on that, or it is the audience that you have, or it's the goals, right? Sometimes you can have a really good idea, but it's going to take you away from the goal that you had set for your year. Then you need to set that aside. So, I'm really a big fan of having a strong filter for your decision making as an equestrian entrepreneur, because without that, absolutely burnout will come because you're going to run with every idea that you have. Every marketer that says you need to have an online course or a video or a podcast, and you're going to feel like you have to do all of these things that can be really good. But just because it's good doesn't mean it's great for you and your business. So you have to really be able to filter that through your priorities, your why, and what works for you, your season, and your capacity. And then when you make decisions based on those filters, you'll fall into success. Absolutely.
See, rocked it. I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Denise.
Thank you for having me, Megan. I appreciate it.